There's a legend around here. A killer buried but not dead. A curse on Crystal Lake. A death curse. Jason Voorhees curse. They say he died as a boy, but keeps coming back. Few have seen him and lived. Some even try to stop him. No one can. People forget he's down there, waiting.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another edition of History Of. My name is Anthony from the Knights of Horror, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite killers of all time. His name is Jason Voorhees. For those of you who have never seen the Friday the 13th franchise, pause this video, go binge watch all the movies, and then come back to watch this video, for this video will contain spoilers. Still here? Alright, let's begin. Jason Voorhees is the main antagonist for the Friday the 13th franchise and one of two main antagonists for the crossover film Freddy vs. Jason, along with Freddy Krueger. He was a silent, undead, and unstoppable killing machine. Jason was an iconic madman who haunts Camp Crystal Lake and the surrounding area, driven to slaughter anyone he encounters by a burning need to avenge the death of his beloved mother, Pamela Voorhees. The original Jason Voorhees has killed at least 152 people. This counts Andy's and Debbie's unborn child. 20 of the people he killed during his body possession spree, and Craig and Duke's girlfriend, and in two deleted scenes, an unnamed man in a bathroom, and Vicky's boyfriend, which some of them are completely off screen. The remake Jason has killed 13 people. Jason Voorhees was born in a small town of Crystal Lake on June 13, 1946, to Elias and Pamela Voorhees. Jason was afflicted with several disabilities, an abnormally large head, and a mental disability. Raising Jason on her own, Pamela kept her son isolated from the community, not letting him attend school and educating him in their home on the outskirts of Crystal Lake. In the summer of 1957, Pamela, unable to get a babysitter for Jason, resorted to bringing him to Camp Crystal Lake, where she worked as a cook. While being bullied by the other campers, Jason attempted to escape from his tormentors, but the cruel children caught up to him on the dock and threw Jason into the lake, where he drowned. The counselors were supposed to be watching the children, but instead were talking and having sex in the woods. Though Jason's body was never found, the camp closed as a result, but reopened the next summer. It was closed again when Pamela, mad with grief, murdered Barry and Claudette, the counselors she blamed for Jason's drowning. Pamela was never suspected of the murders, and all subsequent attempts to open the camp ended in failure, presumably due to sabotage on Pamela's part, resulting in the camp being nicknamed Camp Blood by the locals, who came to believe the area was cursed. Jason somehow returned to life after his death, constructing and living in a crude shelter in the forest, seemingly waiting for his mother to find him and managing to live in the woods surrounding Camp Crystal Lake for 21 long years. He lived off the land and whatever he could get from the camp. During these years, Pamela never found out where he was, nor did he see her again until her death. In the summer of 1979, Steve Christie, the son of Camp Crystal Lake's founder David and Louise Christie, tried to reopen the camp and hiring several teenagers from out of town to assist him. Enraged by Steve's actions, Pamela murdered him and almost all of his employees, with Alice Hardy surviving, the girl who cut Mrs. Voorhees' head off with a machete. After killing Pamela, Alice fell asleep or passed out in a canoe and was rescued by police. She had a perceived nightmare when a young, decayed Jason appeared out of the water and dragged her into the lake. When Alice told the police about Jason attacking her, they reassured her that they never found any evidence of a boy in the lake. After his mother's murder spree, Jason, having apparently witnessed his mother's death, grabbed her sweater, pants, severed head, and the machete that killed her and returned to his shack with them, placing the objects on a crude altar he had constructed. 2 months after Pamela's death, around when Alice returned to Camp Crystal Lake to face her demon, Jason soon left the woods and entered the town in search for his mother's killer. Jason somehow tracked her down to her apartment there, snuck inside and stabbed her in the head with an ice pick, after scaring her by placing his mother's head in her refrigerator, escaping with Allison's body. Jason placed it at the foot of his mother's shrine. 3 years after killing Alice, Jason discovered a local teenager named Chris Higgins in the woods, attacked her with a knife, knocking her out in the struggle. Exactly what happened next is unknown, but hours later, Chris woke up at home with no idea how she got there. Beginning of mass killing sprees. Jason mass murders began in the summer of 1984 when he learned a new group of camp counselors occupying the nearby Packanack Lodge. Determined to destroy the trespass, he began to watch the group closely and stalk them to their deaths. He kills a cop and Ralph and puts the cop's corpse next to the shrine because he saw that it was already in the shack. Jason attacked Packanack Lodge in the middle of the night, murdering the 6 would-be counselors who had decided to stay behind instead of going into the town for one last night of fun. Hiding the counselors' bodies and bringing the last one to a shack, Jason stayed into the lodge, awaiting more victims to present themselves. When Paul and his assistant, Ginny Field, returned, Jason knocked out Paul and chased Ginny through the grounds of the lodge all the way to his shack, where Ginny discovered the shrine erected to Pamela. Aware of Jason's history, Ginny donned Pamela's sweater and tricked Jason into thinking that it was his mother, distracting him long enough for Paul to appear. As Paul and Jason fought, Ginny grabbed the machete used to kill Mrs. Voorhees and slammed it into Jason's shoulder, the blow knocking him out. Despite his injury, Jason recovered and followed Ginny and Paul back to the Packanack Lodge, where an unmasked Jason crashed through a window and attacked Ginny, causing her to black out. The next day, a bewinded Ginny was found by paramedics, but Jason and Paul were nowhere to be found. Reaching a small store, Jason killed the owners and stole their new clothes, then made his way to Higgins Haven, vacation home of his would-be victims, Chris, where he spent the night. The next day, Jason attacked 2 bikers, succeeding in only knocking out the leader, before moving on to Chris's friends, killing them one by one, acquiring the hockey mask from a boy named Shelley Finkenstein, and using it to replace his burlap sack, which he had lost earlier. When Chris and her boyfriend Rick, who had been out, returned to Higgins Haven, Jason killed Rick and gave chase to Chris, who eventually recognized Jason as a man who attacked her 2 years ago. Becoming trapped in the barn with Jason, Chris, when a recovered ally died trying to attack Jason, used a distraction to split Jason's head open with an axe. After being momentarily stunned by the axe blow, Jason managed to stumble forward and try to grab Chris before falling over, seemingly dead. The next day, a hysterical Chris was found by the police and led away, ranting about a dream in which Jason was still alive and being attacked by a decayed Pamela out on the lake. That night, Jason and his 10 victims were taken to the Wessex County morgue, where Jason revived, killing the coroner and the nurse before beginning to make his way back to Crystal Lake, murdering a hitchhiker on the way there. Reaching the home of the 12-year-old Tommy Jarvis and his family by the next night, Jason murdered a group of teenagers vacationing next to Packanack Lodge who had been there looking for Jason in order to avenge his sister's death. Going after Tommy and his sister Trish, Jason's rampage was brought to an end when Tommy, using some newspaper clippings belonging to Rob as a reference, altered his appearance to resemble as young Jason, which distracted the killer and allowed Tommy to strike him in the head with Rob's machete, causing Jason to topple over forward, pushing the blade even deeper into his skull, as Tommy and Trish embraced. Tommy, noticing that Jason was showing faint signs of life, grabbed the machete and began hacking away on Jason's body, screaming, "Die, die, die," over and over. The Jarvis siblings were found a short time later, and Jason's body was buried in the Eternal Peace Cemetery, though most local officials were apparently misinformed and believed the killer had been cremated. Killing 30 teenagers and adults in the space of only a few days, the summer of 1984 was Jason's bloodiest year yet. 6 years after killing Jason, Tommy Jarvis, who had been in and out of institutions since his encounter with Jason, was sent to Pinehurst Halfway House. Shortly after Tommy's arrival, residents of the area started to be killed off at an alarming rate. The brutality and seemingly random nature of the murders causing the authorities to fear that Jason had somehow returned. The one responsible for the new killing spree revealed to be a paramedic named Roy Burns, who had snapped and began copycatting Jason after the death of his son at Pinehurst, was eventually killed in self-defense by Tommy. Due to Roy's killing spree reawakening his deep-seated fear of Jason, Tommy, already unhinged and suffering from visual and auditory hallucinations, he's a psychotic fit and nearly became another Jason copycat, donning a hockey mask that greatly resembled or somehow actually was Roy's mask, brandishing a knife and coming close to murdering his friend Pam Roberts. Put back into an institution after nearly killing Pam, Tommy was released back into society in June of 1991. Believing that destroying Jason's body would cure him and allow him to move on, Tommy went to the Eternal Peace Cemetery with his friend Alan Hawes and began digging up Jason's corpse, planning on cremating it. Unfortunately, the sight of Jason's body caused Tommy to have an episode and attack that rotted Husk with a metal fence post. Calming down after stabbing the body several times, Tommy left the fence post embedded in Jason's chest, which led to Jason being resurrected when the post acted as a lightning rod, attracting several bolts created by an oncoming storm. Rising from the grave, Jason killed Hawes after seeing Tommy running away, though it is unknown if he actually remembers Tommy as the young boy who killed him. Putting on a hockey mask that Tommy left behind, the killer began making his way back to Camp Crystal Lake, renamed Camp Forest Green. After a day of traveling on foot and killing everyone he encountered, Jason reached the camp and killed the 2 active counselors, having already murdered the other 3 during his trek. Moving in on the children, Jason was drawn away from them when Sheriff Michael Garris and 2 officers appeared to investigate the lack of communication with the camp. Easily dispatching of the officers, Jason briefly struggled with the sheriff, but in the end managed to finish them off as well. After killing Garris, Jason attacked his daughter and the only remaining counselor, Megan, but was lured away from her and into the lake by Tommy. Attempting to drag Tommy out of his boat and into the water, Jason was set on fire and chained to the bottom of the lake by a young man, who still managed to drown. Struggling to free himself, Jason tried dragging Megan under as well when he swam out to save Tommy, but was left paralyzed when the girl used the detached monitor on Tommy's boat to cut into his neck, breaking it. Megan successfully rescued Tommy, leaving Jason trapped at the bottom of the lake. 7 years into his imprisonment, Jason nearly managed to drown 14-year-old Rennie Wickham when the girl was pushed into Camp Crystal Lake by her uncle, who was trying to teach her how to swim. Seeing Jason as a child through her latent empathic abilities, Rennie barely escaped Jason's grasp and was left haunted by the encounter with him, becoming aquaphobic. Psychic teenager Tina Shepard, wanting to bring back her father, whom she had accidentally killed using her powers years later, accidentally awakened and released Jason from his watery tomb and from the dead. The shock of doing so, knocking the girl out, causing Jason to ignore her. Wandering the Crystal Lake area, Jason returned to killing, slaughtering his way to the Shepard home and the house next door, which several teenagers had rented for a birthday party, butchering the teens as well as Tina's mother and her doctor. Jason ultimately faced off against Tina, her telekinesis easily matching his raw power, their fight destroying both houses. Tina and Jason's battle reached its climax on the docks of Crystal Lake, where Tina, using her powers, resurrected her father, who dragged Jason off the dock and chained him to the bottom of the lake once again. The next summer, Jason became active once more when the anchor of a passing yacht served as an underwater electric cable, which shocked Jason back to life. Boarding the yacht, Jason murdered the 2 teenage lovers aboard, gaining a new hockey mask from the boy to replace the one Tina had destroyed during their fight. Drifting aimlessly, the yacht brought Jason to SS Lazarus, a cruise ship which was taking the graduating class of Lakeview High School to New York City. Climbing aboard the ship, Jason set about killing off the crew and students, his presence causing the now 18-year-old Rennie Wickham to be plagued by visitors of Jason's younger self. Starting a fire by throwing a student onto a control panel, Jason caused the Lazarus to sink, drowning everyone still aboard. Having seen Renee, her classmates Sean Robinson and Julius Gaw, and teachers Colin Van Dusen and Charles McCulloch escaped in a lifeboat, Jason followed them to New York after swimming or walking on the ocean floor. Catching up to them in the group of Manhattan, Jason pushed through the streets, killing Julius, Charles, and whoever blocked his progress. Chasing Renee and Sean, Colleen having died in the car accident through Times Square, a subway, a diner, and into the sewers. Jason eventually cornered the 2, knocking Sean out and killing the sanitation engineer who had been guiding him and Renee through the tunnels. Chasing Renee, Jason was horribly burned when the girl threw an old canister of toxic waste into his face, causing it to melt. Tearing his smoldering mask off and blindingly stumbling after Renee, Jason grabbed her leg, and when she and Sean tried to climb out of the sewer, but before he could pull her down, he was caught in a wave of sludge and rushed through the tunnels and was melted down as Sean and Renee, who hallucinated Jason as a child one final time, escaped through the manhole. Presumably washed out to sea by the sludge, Jason made his way back to Crystal Lake with the hockey mask fused to his face due to the toxic waste. In July of 2003, an undercover FBI agent, Elizabeth Marcus, stopped by a cabin on the campgrounds only to be chased by Jason into the woods. Marcus led Jason into an ambush where FBI agents had riddled him with hundreds of bullets and blown him apart with a grenade. Jason's remains were sent to a federal morgue in Youngstown, Ohio, where Jason, as the coroner examined him, possessed the man by hypnotizing him into eating his disembodied heart. With his new body, Jason killed the assistant coroner and a pair of FBI agents left to guard the morgue and began making his way back to Crystal Lake. Instinctively seeking out his half-sister, Diane Kimball, who he intended to possess in order to fully resurrect himself. After 5 days and claiming 9 more victims, Jason reached Crystal Lake and transferred his worm-like soul from Phil to Josh, a policeman attacking Diana in her home. Jason struggled with Stephen Freeman when he arrived, accidentally killing Diana with a knife sharpener he had intended to throw at Stephen. Fleeing the scene after being impaled with the fireplace poker and knocked through the window by Stephen, Jason abandoned Josh's body the next day and acquired a new one, that of Robert Campbell, a reporter and the boyfriend of Diana's daughter Jessica, Jason's newest target. Finding Jessica at home, Jason tried to possess her, but was wounded by Stephen, who escaped with Jessica. Tracking Jessica down to the police department, Jason killed Deputy Ryan, knocked out another officer, and Sheriff Landis, and came close to possessing Jessica, only for Stephen to interfere again. Shot a number of times by Stephen, Jason was briefly downed, but recovered, kills a pair of officers, and chased Stephen and Jessica to the diner where Diana had worked. Shrugging off a barrage of gunshots, Jason, after killing the family owning the diner, collapsed after Jessica's friend Vicky sacrificed herself in an attempt to stop him. Recovering by the time the police showed up, Jason possessed Deputy Randy Parker and made his way to the old home, arriving there at the same time as Sheriff Landis. Seeing Jessica had an enchanted dagger which could send him to hell, Jason pretended to be Randy, even speaking, confusing Jessica and causing her to accidentally kill Sheriff Landis when he tried disarming her. When Jessica dropped the dagger after stabbing Landis with it, Jason rushed over to Stephanie, Jessica and Stephen's infant daughter, and prepared to possess her. Arriving just in time, Stephen partially beheaded Randy with a machete, forcing Jason's soul to crawl out of his grappling neck wound, scurrying through the house. Jason's soul was knocked into a hole into the floor by Stephen, where it found Diana's dead body, which had been placed in the house by Robert, who had intended to discover it during a route walk through with his crew. Slithering up his half-sister's vagina, Jason successfully resurrected himself and went back after Jessica and Stephen, only being momentarily distracted by Crennington Duke, a bounty hunter with a vendetta against him. After breaking Duke's back, Jason was tackled out of the window by Stephen, and the two fought, with Jason having the obvious advantage. Before he can beat Stephen to death, Jason was attacked from behind by Jessica, who recovered the dagger. Stabbed in the chest, Jason was grabbed by demonic hands that burst out into the dirt. Feebly struggling, was dragged down to hell, losing his mask in the process. Leaving with their baby at dawn, Jessica and Stephen failed to notice the bladed glove of Freddy Krueger shot out of the ground and grabbed the abandoned hockey mask. In his personal hell, Jason wandered a perfect recreation of Camp Crystal Lake that was a perpetual twilight, seemingly killing the same shade of possible previous victim over and over again. Jason's cycle of stalking and killing was eventually interrupted by Freddy Krueger, who, under the guise of Miss Voorhees, used what remained of his power to resurrect Jason, telling him to go to Springwood and punish the children there. Weak due to the residents of the hometown suppressing and censoring all knowledge of pertaining to him and quarantining those aware of his existence, Freddy's plan was to have Jason kill and cause panic, making the authorities believe he has returned, creating fear and giving him power. Jason killed several Springwood residents, and the deaths were blamed on Freddy, just like the Dreamstalker thought they would be. Things soon became complicated when Jason, despite fulfilling his purpose, continued killing, claiming more and more victims before Freddy could kill them in their dreams. After attacking a rave, killing at least 10 people, Jason followed Lori Campbell and her friends Will Rollins, Charlie Linderman, Kia Freenberg, and Deputy Stubbs to Weston Hills Psychiatric Institute, the group having gone there in search of dream suppressant hypnosis, which could protect them from Freddy. Breaking into the asylum, Jason killed a guard and Deputy Stubbs and gave chase to the others, but was confronted by Freddy, who had possessed Freeberg and disposed of the hypopsyl. Using a massive amount of tranquilizer, Freddy knocked out Jason right before he sliced Freeberg's body in half. With Jason now unconscious, the remaining survivors, Lori, Will, Kia, and Litterman, collected all the tranquilizers that they could find and loaded Jason's body into a van to take him back to Crystal Lake, hoping that they could wake Jason so he could defeat Freddy, where he had the home field advantage, and then be content to remain at the lake. Confronted by Freddy in the dream world and figuring out he was being used, Jason was battered by the other killer, who had the advantage of possessing reality warping powers in his remain. Managing to endure everything that Freddy threw at him, Jason lost his composure when a pipe burst and showered him with water. His deep-seated fear of water and drowning have been brought to the surface by being in the dream world. Regressed to a helpless child by Freddy, Jason was whisked away to a 1950s-style version of Camp Crystal Lake, where he relived being knocked into the lake by bullying campers while none of the counselors were watching him. Jason was narrowly saved by Laurie, who had entered the dream world intent of dragging Freddy out. Due to being distracted by Laurie, Freddy lost hold of Jason, who woke up in the back of the van and with the others. Breaking his bonds, Jason caused the van to crash and was sent flying back out of it. Recovering quickly, Jason reached Camp Crystal Lake, where he had been converted into a resort shortly after. Will, Kia, and Litterman, who were forced to carry Laurie, who was trapped in the world by Freddy, bursting into a cabin and attacking Will, Kia, and Litterman. Jason injured all three, though Charlie died of the injuries later on, and during the struggle caused the cabin to catch on fire. As the flames spread, Jason and Laurie finally woke up after being burnt and dragged Freddy into the real world. Moved the other killer. Jason and Freddy engaged in a brutal battle which brought them both the campgrounds and nearby construction site and to the docks, which Laurie and Will, Litterman and Kia have been killed by Jason in the crossfire, and Kia caught up to Will and Laurie, and after she left Charlie, who told her to get help and she didn't notice he died, set on fire. As the flames raced towards them, Jason and Freddy continued fighting. Jason ripping his opponent's arm off, while Freddy, having earlier claimed Jason's machete, stabbed him in the heart with it. The fire soon reached some stacked propane tanks, causing them to erupt, the explosion setting Jason and Freddy on fire and flinging them into the lake. When Freddy reached the dock and prepared to kill both Laurie and Will, Jason, using his last ounce of strength, leaped out of the water and impaled Freddy with his own severed arm. When Laurie beheaded Freddy with his machete, she, seeing Jason sinking to the bottom of the lake, Freddy's body and severed head, tossed the weapon to him. The next day, Jason emerged from the waters clutching Freddy's head, which winked and laughed, though this didn't seem to bother Jason. In December, 5 years after his battle with Freddy, Jason had completely recovered from his injuries and still stays in Camp Crystal Lake, where, with it again being named Forest Green, Freddy is trapped within Jason's subconscious. Will and Laurie return to the camp for closure and to make sure Jason and Freddy are really dead. Jason's first guts Will and hangs him from the roof. He then goes on after Laurie tries to fight Jason with a chainsaw, but eventually overpowered and killed by Jason, who then disposed of her and Will. While lurking in Jason's thoughts, Freddy learns of a demonic book called the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, which can be used to bring him back to life. By coincidence, the Necronomicon is hidden in the Voorhees home. In a trance, Freddy once again uses Pamela to convince Jason that the only way to get rid of Freddy is with the Necronomicon, and that it will also make Jason a real boy. While looking for the demonic book, Jason murders 3 girls. The murder is analyzed by Ash Williams, who came into town to help with the local S-Mart. Ash believed Jason to be a Deadite, undead demonic entities created by the Necronomicon. Ash, having dealt with the Deadites, tries to warn the teenage employee at S-Mart, but naturally none of them believes Ash, except for a girl named Caroline, who is aware of Jason's existence. One of the teens also makes the mistake of pulling a prank on Ash by dressing up as Jason. In another trance, Freddy appears as Jason's father, reminding him of his duties to find the book. After his dream, Jason butchers several Christmas carolers and later kills a group of teenagers camping in the Voorhees home, except for one named Bree. Ash, who was following the partying teenagers, finds a Necronomicon and escapes with Bree. Jason attempts to intercept them while they are driving away. Jason destroys the car, but Ash and Bree elude him. Regardless, Jason still relentlessly stalks them to the S-Mart as Freddy urges him. There, Jason massacres several employees, including Bree, and several customers as well. Ash and the survivors take refuge in Caroline's house, where they realize that Jason's limited intelligence that he must be a pawn. It's at a point where Freddy slowly begins to reveal himself to Ash. Freddy finally materializes himself outside the dream world and orders Jason to kill Ash to leave the others for later while he reads the Necronomicon. 3 of the boys lure Jason to the Voorhees home, planning a trap there. Jason, however, realizes the trick and later confronts Freddy, interrupting the fight between the Dream Demon and Ash. However, Freddy has mastered the Necronomicon enough to summon Jason's many victims as Deadites to kill him, but Jason fights his vengeful victims. During the struggle, Ash manages to steal the book and flee into the woods. Freddy soon charges the campgrounds into a familiar home on Elm Street and summons the spirits of his own victims to kill Ash. Jason manages to find his way to Freddy's warped reality and begins to fight him head-on. When Freddy gaining the upper hand, Caroline and Ash attempt to escape with the book, but is stolen by Jason. During the heated struggle, the Voorhees home is destroyed and Ash falls unconscious. Freddy and Jason also survive, but are trapped in the rubble. Ash does not regain consciousness, just as Freddy escapes the rubble, as does Jason, much of Freddy's knowledge. Ash, Freddy, and Jason begin a full-out fight. Ash is brutally beaten during the fight but refuses to back down against them. Caroline begins to read the discarded Necronomicon, opening a portal which begins to pull Freddy in. Jason is too strong to be pulled in, but the vortex causes Ash's car to knock Jason beneath the frozen lake, while Freddy is dragged into the vortex completely. Ash and Caroline survive the fight, but Ash remains confident that the world hasn't seen the last of them. Government agents led by Detective Gordon Russell led a search across the campgrounds for the Necronomicon. The book is found, and 2 other agents find Jason, who awakens and kills both of them. Once again, under the guise of Pamela, Freddy urges Jason to hunt down Ash. Months later, after Jason kills Caroline, Jason follows Ash to Baltimore, Maryland. While Ash is on a train, Jason stows away in a train boxcar. Many of Freddy and Jason's survivors met each other in a meeting organized by doctors Maggie Burroughs and Neil Gordon. Among those at the meeting are Stephanie Kimple, her father Stephen, Alice Johnson and her son Jacob, Tina Shepard, and Rennie Wickham. Ash meets with them and they begin to discuss their goals, but are interrupted by Jason, who kills Stephen. While Ash prepares to fight Jason himself, a Hummer drives through the house and rams Jason. The driver is revealed to be Tommy Jarvis. While the survivors flee and make plan to stop Jason, as Jason gets back up, government agents open fire on Jason and capture him. In Washington, Jason was put in a holding cell full of dead people. He was visited mentally by Freddy, who tells him to plan to massacre the world. After hearing of the presence of his old enemy, namely Tommy, will be coming for them, Jason agrees and becomes the leader of the Deadeye Army. Pleased, Freddy decides to resurrect Jason with the Necronomicon. The result restores Jason's hands, flesh, and full head of flowing hair, now armed with 2 machetes. Later, while the survivors battle Freddy, Jason and the Deadites descend upon Washington. While Jason and his demonic army terrorize the streets, Jason is confronted by Tommy. Just as the fight is provoked, and a winged Deadite drags Tommy to meet Freddy, who is abducting Jacob at the White House. Tommy and Jacob are held hostage by Freddy, Jason, and Maggie, who is revealed to be Freddy's daughter. Catherine, who has portrayed the group, little did the killers know was that Ash, Alice, Tina, and Stephanie are onto them. However, Stephanie separates from the group and later encounters Freddy, who tells her it is her destiny to end up like Jason, considering their biological relation. Clad in hockey mask, Stephanie prepares herself to kill Jason. Back at the White House, a brief fight ensues between Jason and Catherine. Tina kills Catherine and Alice allows Freddy to kill her, passing the powers on to Jacob, who takes this as a chance to summon the spirits of Amanda Kruger and the Dream Warriors. The Deadites are destroyed, but Freddy wounds Jacob. Ash begins to fight Freddy, while Stephanie and Tommy face Jason. Tommy taunts Jason about not being able to kill him. During the struggle, Jason's mask is cut off. Surprisingly, the effect of the rebirth gave Jason a normal, undeformed face. Stephanie impales Jason and Tommy decapitates Jason with a shard of glass. Freddy absorbs Jason's soul, seemingly at full peak, but Neil and the spirit of Nancy Thompson recite the chant to open the portal to the Deadites' dimension, and Freddy is stripped from his powers and shot into the portal by Ash, freeing all the souls, including Jason. After the survivors of the battle leave, Pamela's voice is heard telling him he will never die, foreshadowing another resurrection. As there are supernatural and demonic things involved with Jason, it is not known if Jason really even had a character and personality anymore, save for that of a mute stalking murderer. However, it did seem that he must have had some residue of humanity left in him throughout it, being that of a child. Jason was known to grunt when injured heavily. He revered his mother as she was the only person that showed him true love in his childhood. After her death, he constructed a crude altar in the shack where he lived with his mother's head at the center, to which he placed his victims at the foot of it, as though it were a human sacrifice, demonstrating that he had some beliefs. Jeannie Field, knowing the story of him and his mother, used the child persona against him to trap him in order to kill him to protect herself from further harm. Tommy Jarvis, as a child, also used the child persona against him by making himself look like Jason did as a child, in order to trap him like Ginny had once done to save his sister. Both attempts to use child persona against him were successful. Jason stalked his victims cunningly, quietly, and sometimes grudgingly, as with Tommy Jarvis and Tina Shepard at one point, but not recklessly and luring them to their deaths. After killing his victims, he usually hid the bodies to prevent others from raising the alarm and to create more terror when his next intended victim would find it. If Jason had any virtues left, it would be that he never had children under the age of 13 or pets. The novel Hate, Kill, Repeat implied that he was responsible for the deaths of 2 children in a family, but the murderers. Another possible virtue of Jason is shown when he saves Laurie Campbell twice from becoming Freddy Krueger's victim, and she saved him from getting killed by the Dream Stalker himself. Though it is not actually known if he saved her on purpose, Jason truly hated Freddy Krueger for tricking and using him. However, in Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, he was shown to be willing to cooperate with him. In return, Freddy used the Necronomicon to boost his intelligence. Many have given suggestions as Jason's motivation for killing. Ken Kurtzinger refers to Jason as a psychotic mama's boy gone horribly array. Very resilient, you can't kill him, but he feels pain, just like everyone else. He then goes on to say that Jason is a psycho servant and believes his actions are based on pleasing his mother and not anything personal. Andrew O'Heir has stated, chorusing hormones act of course as smelling salts to prudish Jason, the ever-virgin enforcer of William Bennett Styles' values. Jason might violently murder any person he comes across, but when Jason takes Manhattan, called for Horder to kick the lead character's dog, Horder refused, stating that while Jason has no qualities against killing humans, he is not bad enough to hurt animals. Another example of Jason Takes Manhattan involves Jason being confronted by a street gang of young teenage boys, one of whom threatens him with a knife. However, Jason chooses not to kill them and instead scares them off by lifting up his mask and showing them his face. Likewise, director Tom McLaughlin chose not to have Jason harm any of the children he encounters in Jason Lives, stating that Jason would not kill a child out of sympathy for the children gathered by his own death as a child. Jason's powers and abilities include immortality, resurrection, regeneration, superhuman strength, superhuman durability, numbness, intelligence, enhanced speed, and weapons proficiency. And that, my friends, is the history of Jason Voorhees. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. I put up new videos every week. For all my current supporters, much love to you guys. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll see you in the next one. Jason's powers and abilities include immortality, resurrection, regeneration, superhuman strength, superhuman durability, numbness, intelligence, enhanced speed, and weapons proficiency. And that, my friends, is the history of Jason Voorhees. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. I put up new videos every week. For all my current supporters, much love to you guys. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll see you in the next one. Also, happy Friday the 13th.